Okay, so I am at the Lake Mary Historical Museum, and today is the opening exhibit of a quilt exhibit. And I'm here with one, two, three, four, five of the women that I quilt with as part of a group out of Hannibal Cultural Center. And we are going to listen to the historian and curator, whose name is
Jane Kenovich,
who is going to talk to us about some of the artifacts in the museum before we start talking about the quilts.
These are just one of the ladies who's an artist that works with us. These were her mother's, and she did all of these. Look at this little one up front. The little doll has 2 rows of ruffles on it. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I'm looking at the little umbrellas.
I know.
The what do you call it? The bears.
Yes, there's all kinds
The
of.
little hands.
It's
amazing.
Her mother did. This is a small sample of what her mother did, and she dipped them in either glue or in starch and water. And yeah, and that's
we
how
used to
she.
eat, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that too.
And then you'll have some crochet
Oh.
in this.
Yes. Up front here, we
Yes.
have crocheting and tatting, which is truly a lost art, but I have watched people do tatting, and I have no idea how they can look at you and talk and just, and it's because you can see how fine it is.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. So crocheting tends to be
This
larger
is
stitches,
crocheting,
where
right.
tatting is like micro,
This is tatting.
very, very, very small.
And that on the hankies is tatting, and that piece is tatting.
All
So,
handmade.
everything's handmade.
Wow.
And these booties are from, one pair is 1938, 1940, and 1942.
Wow.
So, and this is called Rosashi, and it's Chinese canvas work, Chinese embroidery. And the thread is gold. It's not thread. It's gold.
How cool
Yes.
is that?
And this lady, Margaret Kinsey, went to Japan to learn this. And she was over there for like a month or so. And she's one of 2 people in this country that is certified to teach the Rosashi. So, and it's just, everything she creates is just beautiful. And everything is by hand. This exhibit, a lot of the things are by hand, which compared to a couple other exhibits, that's a lot different. But this case, this was a lap blanket that was started by a friend of mine, her mother, and her mother passed away before she could finish it, so she put it in the shadow box and left it as it was.
Wow.
So, and that's her needlepoint as well, her mother's needlepoint.
So most of these skills are dying arts because women don't know how to knit, crochet, needlepoint,
No,
tat, none of that.
no. So, and I will leave you to talk about your quilts.
Well, thank
But
you for sharing
Thank you.
I
some of the
just want
history.
to point out the one on the stage, that signature quilt all the way up there. That was made in 1926, and it was made as a fundraiser for the Presbyterian Church. They were doing a building fund. So people had to pay 5 cents to sign it. They signed it in pencil, and that's how they started the fund. Then the Ladies' Aid Society went and embroidered over all the signatures so they would be exactly as they signed it, their handwriting. So that quilt started between the signatures and what it was auctioned off for. And the lady that bought it was the wife of Frank Evans, who built this museum. And so anyway, but she purchased the quilt, and between the quilt and the signatures, they raised $1,000 for the church, which was
Astronomical sum in that time.
But if you look at the quilt, you can still see some of the pencil marks underneath. And people keep saying to me, you should get that cleaned. It would be so much better. I went, no, I'll lose the pencil marks.
It's the historical value with
yes.
it as is.
So anyway, that's what that quilt is. That one I wanted to point out. And have a good time.
Thank you.
Any questions?
We will
you know
ask
where
you.
I am.
Okay.
All right, Miss Linda, I think the first quilt we come to is yours.
Okay.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your quilt.
This is called Fire Engine. I mean, not the fire engine, the fire hydrant. And I lived in New York, so fire hydrants was meant a lot to us. We wanted to, we did in the summer times, fire chiefs and firefighters would open up the hydrant and let us go
And play
in the water.
Right, and they used
A similar experience growing up in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
did the same thing.
And the brownstones are basically where, the people lived, because New York it's a metropolitan. And I had the buildings in the back, the tall buildings in the back, and it was my inspiration to bring that memory back of playing in the fire hydrant.
All right. And those of us who grew up in urban areas, we can certainly relate.
Oh.
Okay. So over here, this is not a quilt that any of us did, but it says it's called the Apple Blossom Quilt.
Squares. That's squares. This is all hand done.
Hand done, yeah. And it's like appliqued. And it's beautiful. Isn't that beautiful, ladies?
Yes.
Gorgeous. The colors are very brilliant. Greens and pinks and rich royal reds.
I mean, in the pattern itself, to be such a large piece, it was a lot of work.
Especially, yes, since it was all hand done. And so for most of us that quilt, we do it on a machine, but we know old school, it was all hand done. So what do we have over here? Oh, I think this one is one by Pamela Edwards. Yes, Miss Edwards is going to come. And if you want, you can share with us how you came up with the idea. You can read what you have on the card. You can give us the backstory. You can just share.
The backstory is learning about how people were incarcerated and really seeing a documentary by Brian Stevenson, and I was trying to think of doing a social justice piece. And when I saw the jars that they had displayed from the soil collections, I thought, okay, I can do this. And how were people killed or lynched? And it was on a tree. So that's where I decided, from where he had where they had the jars at soil collection and got different fabric, where most of it is silks and some cottons that are used on there. And the tree, I figured you had to have a strong tree. This wasn't light or flimsy, and some of it has upholstery material that I used different fibers within it. And then the top, I had an African print, and I just cut strips and just wanted to see how could I make like a sky or a skyline with it. And that's basically what I had done with it.
And so for people who may not be aware of the backstory that Pamela just shared with us, in the United States, regrettably, we have a history in the South, more in the South than in the North, of lynching. And at this museum, what they did is they went, I believe, to different states, and in places where they knew that men or women or whomever had been lynched, they collected the soil, did they not? And they wanted to make a statement that this was part of our history in the United States, and that's what you, without a doubt,
Right. Was
conveyed.
represented, right.
Yes. Anything else you want to share about your piece?
No.
Okay, and so over here, this again is not a work that we did, but this is, I knew this was a wedding ring, double wedding ring. So this is like, I want to call like vintage, like American, like for women that quilted all over the world. I think there was, maybe not all over the world, but in the United States. I think there are certain patterns that are a part of our history, and double wedding rings is one such pattern. And so you can do research on some of these patterns that we're talking about. And now we're just gonna mosey over here. Oh, let's go up here and see what do we have. Do we want to go up there and look at any of these quilts?
Let's do a trapunto quilt.
Okay.
Let me see how to explain it. Your hand done. With trapunto, you take a design or a flower. It can be a design. They just happen to use as a flower, and you can use some embroidery type threads, and you hand stitch the different pieces on here. And then later you can see that they've hand stitched the other quilting, where you would see just your basic color on the quilt.
So it looks like it's applique and embroidery combined,
Right.
kind of, sort of. Absolutely beautiful. So I'm not certain why a lot of motifs for quilts that are done are like floral, flowers. Why do we think that is?
I think people try to capture nature, and this one, I don't know if it is. This one almost reminds me of a cherry blossom tree.
It does remind you of cherry blossoms. Let's see, what does she call it? And in fact, she calls it cherry blossom quilt.
Okay, quilt. Yeah. So that's what that is. So I think it's just the nature of what you see in nature, where you'll find a lot of people do pictures of trees, of plants, birds, and I think we're enticed by nature.
I think you're right. All right, so we're just gonna step down here. And I'm gonna hold this up so I don't trip like I was tripping up. Oh, this is kind of cool. Yes. Oh, Miss Renee?
This is one of the crafts that I taught myself how to cross stitch, but this particular artist has used it in a very unique way. She's got cross stitching at the borders of this picture, but then she has faces in the center, and to do the hair, it's a different kind of a stitch.
Yeah.
It's like she just kind of layered the stitch based on the length of the hair that she wanted. Here at the bottom, she used some hoop. Instead of pulling the thread all the way through, she left it so that it left a loop there. So it looks kind of like a hoop rug. But then she did some embroidering of flowers and some embroidering of along the interior of this picture. It's very unique. It's got a lot of different elements to it, some raised, some flat, and just very different.
So the beauty for me is that as women quilters, we all bring different skills and levels of expertise. And just so you know, we're going to be doing an exhibit at Hannibal Cultural Center the end of the month on January 27th for those of you who are local in the Florida area. And I suggest you come out and you'll be able to see more of our work. We're just basically at the Lake Mary Museum. Some of us do have work here currently, and we're just walking around and sharing some of our thoughts with you. I think this piece, which is called Reboot, Revive, Recycle, The Great Purge of 2018, is actually what they are using in their promos. And is this, no, we don't know who
It's
this
from
is.
the Orlando Modern Quilt Guild. Let me see. Linda
Naughton.
Naughton.
And I believe you are a member of that guild?
Yes.
And could you explain to us what that is?
Orlando Modern Quilt Guild basically is taking quilts and you're putting a modern spin on them. So this quilt, I'm going to say what she did. She said she used scraps, and it was just a form of nature and how she did it. So you see a picture of a lizard, you see flowers on here, you see a garden, and it's kind of whimsical.
Yes.
So it's very whimsical, and it makes
colorful.
And colorful, and she has a black background, and she has very colorful, different fabrics on here, and different techniques that she has used.
And what I see is that she has used some pieces that look like there is a pathway. And at
yes.
each pathway, something different is showing.
Yeah, it's
You
like
know,
it
the
meanders
experience,
throughout. Yeah. How cool is that?
The experience is different.
Yes, and what I like too is the color. I love color.
Yes.
And I think most of us, when we do our quilts, we tend to use a lot of color.
lot
A
of
lot of
color.
color. And against the black background, it really
It
pops.
just makes it, yeah.
Exactly. Okay. And so these are more examples of, oh, this is like a collage. That's kind of cool how she did that, floral collage.
This looks like she just took strips of fabric, different sizes, different shapes, laid them down so that it she formed a flower, but the color scheme is what makes this so unique, and how she laid the colors out with the yellows and the reds and the pinks and the greens. And all it is, it looks like it's just pieces of material laid out to form a flower, but they're not great big pieces, they're small pieces, and they were stitched down to make this very unique and beautiful picture.
Wow. Oh, here we go again. We have nature, we have birds. I guess, is that supposed to be a squirrel up there maybe? I don't know. Koala? Who knows?
No, what kind of
A mouse.
A mouse. A mouse. Okay. So this is some kind of like a traditional pattern, is it not? Like log cabin. Yeah. So see, but it's usually log cabins. I don't think they're quite as vibrant. Usually, don't they tend to be more neutral? Maybe kind of. I
You
don't
can
know.
almost do a log cabin if you want to say, I don't know this quilter, but this could almost be put in a category as a modern quilt because of the bright colors that they used. The negative space that they're using, the opposite is white, and then they're just running the cabins in different forms along the quilt.
And kind of, yeah.
Right. So as you did a block, so this would be 4 different blocks, and then it's how you centered it. So she's got the negative space on the outside, and then the other blocks are coming in. So the negative space is coming out. So your eye, if you stand back, your eye will end up hitting the center. It's not just going to hit the negative space. And the negative space, almost in a quilt, it gives you a place where you can rest. Your eyes can rest.
See the wealth of knowledge we have up in here, how we learn something new every day, y'all. Oh my goodness. Now this reminds me of like what Lauren was doing with Hannibal when they were doing like the photo quilts.
It's called Memories.
Yes, that's the name of this quilt, and it says for Old Lake Mary Days 1996. So they did a bunch of photos which they incorporated into the quilt, and these are techniques that I think I can say that I've used in some of the art quilts that I've done, where we print out photos on photo fabric and you incorporate it into the quilt. All right, and so this one is kind of cool.
This one, our guild had a contest for travel, and Margaret Wesley actually was the winner. The criteria was that your piece had to be 100, couldn't be any larger than 100 inches. You can make it any shape you wanted, and you had to have somewhere in the quilt orange. So this one, she has a woman traveling, and her shirt is orange, and she's wearing a pair of jeans, and she has bags. And then you look around, she has a map around the world, and then around the world, she has depicted different cities of interest that you could go to. So you could kind of do it as like a hide and seek or seek and find type quilt as you look at the different pictures of the cities and say, where is that around the world?
Like, where's Waldo? So in
Right.
looking at this, we can see the Sphinx of Egypt. We can see, right, the pyramids. We can see this is the Christ statue in Brazil. We have the Taj Mahal. This is Spain, La Sagrada, that cathedral that hasn't been completed.
This is Holland.
Holland.
Japan?
That's Japan. Oh, I don't know if that's supposed to be Mount Fiji or Kilimanjaro. Hard to tell.
The Colosseum.
And we have the Great Wall of China.
She did a great job.
Is that not like amazing?
And in the background, if you're looking, it almost looks like she used a fabric that you would use for Alaska, where you have the white knights. So
Yeah, like you have the Oris, the Northern Lights.
Northern Lights.
How cool is that? So, art like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So everybody has their own interpretation, do they not?
Yes.
All right, and then over here we have one of my pieces, which, the things that I create are a little bit, eclectic. That's one way to say it. So I call this piece, All That Glitters Ain't Gold. And basically I'm going to read what I put as a backstory. All That Glitters Ain't Gold tells the story of two people with the same astrological sign, Leo. One is a July Leo and the other is an August Leo. Trust and believe there are differences. In any event, this was a fun way for me to document our time together. There were common interests. See if you can figure them out, as well as fundamental differences. In the end, a lesson was learned, hence the title. I also say people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I would recommend reading the poem of the same name by Brian Drew Chalker. So ladies, what do you see or what do you think are common interests here? If you look
Common interest, music.
Absolutely.
Coco Pele, which was the Mexican
Native
kind of-
flute dancer.
Yes.
You have the lions.
Yes,
The
because Leo, right? One's a July Leo and one's a August Leo. I'm an August Leo, just so you know.
The center of life for Africa was Mom.
Yeah, because we both had traveled to different countries in Africa.
Okay, the map, you got a
See? Oops.
you got a good
Okay,
eye.
exactly.
Angels.
Yeah, to me, feathers always find me. Hence, I have a sterling silver feather bracelet.
Ah.
And so they say when feathers appear, angels are near.
Never heard that, but
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah.
Never
So,
heard that.
and it's kind of sort of like giving homage to my ancestors as well, because I think, and here's a feather here, just so you know.
So this is your side?
This was supposed to have been a
Right.
collaboration, but
Your
what
side? Because I
the Adinkra
see-
symbol.
Right.
And so it was supposed to be a collaborative effort, but then in the end, it was not, sort of, kind of. But it's all good. It's all good. So y'all did good.
We captured the essence.
Exactly. And so this one, spinning wheels got to go round.
By Pat Porter. I know she's a member of Orlando Modern Quilt Guild.
Interesting. Because look, this wheel, we have an engagement ring, we have
Broken
a
Heart.
broken heart. So I think she's telling a story here because, we all have stories to tell.
Yeah.
And I think for me, doing that quilt was a fun way for me to tell the story, to express, yeah. Because I say, if you believe that people come in your life for a reason, season, or a lifetime, then sometimes people you meet that you think are going to be in your life for a lifetime, they're only supposed to be in your life for a season or a reason. And we have to be able to discern.
But they're still in your heart.
That's absolutely
So
true.
they're always there, right?
Absolutely. But I mean, we got to learn as women, because how many times as women, we I think always operate from our heart.
Even if it's a dot.
Yes, exactly.
Hardest quilt, even if
Well, one thing I'm going to point out, if you look at, she has skeletons on this quilt, so it might be considered like a Halloween, or even from a cultural,
Right,
where
because
they're
in
celebrating
Mexico Light of the
Mexico
Dead, where
Light,
they
right,
give pay homage to their
to
ancestors.
their ancestries.
Absolutely.
They're on a bus, and there's also a bus with another skeleton on there, so there's a lot that you can take in.
Yeah.
And it's bright and it's colorful, so
It
you're
definitely
not-
catches your
you will-
eye.
It will definitely catch you.
Exactly. And we're winding down. This one is a flag that was donated, and it has writing on it. It says, "Quilting comes from the heart. Friendships are sewn with love and measured with kindness. A quilt is a patchwork of memories, and friendships are stitched with love." No title, but all things that are very, very, very interesting. And this is more embroidery and cross stitch, which is beautiful. Tablecloth, maybe some, yep. Oh, now look at this piece here.
That's another one done by
Seminole
Pat
doll.
Porter.
Okay.
And the center has a Seminole doll, which she purchased. And then, because of the doll and the influence, then she just quilted other things and other material around it.
And just so you know, because you can't see what we're seeing, so when you quilt on the front side, you have perhaps an assortment of fabric. In the back side of the quilt, maybe another type of fabric. It could be one piece. It could be a couple pieces. So, sometimes the beauty is not just the front of the quilt, but also the back of the quilt. And we're almost toward the end. So now, I remember we talked about this one, the Kawandi. And so, Pamela, because you in your guild, a woman has done this, right?
Right, and Kawandi is started from slaves that ended up coming to India. And the way many of the women that quilt, they would use actually scraps that are from their saris, so it's very colorful. And it's an opposite way that we might quilt here in the States, because you work from the outside in. You don't necessarily have to use batting in between. Some people have made it. The ones here are all cotton, and this person also did some other handwork, so she has English paper piecing hexagons on each one of the patches. So I know that each one was hand stitched, and it's basically a running stitch of you use like an embroidery thread or a type of a floss, something a little heavier than just a regular thread.
Right, and you
would
can see
weave
it's hand stitched, right?
Now, is each piece is added, do they continue that
Right,
stitch?
so you'd start from the outside, and you bring a border and you fold in. And if you're going to put a batting in, you put your batting in that way. This one I know has a cotton batting. And then you do each piece on the side, so you kind of work from your outer border,
Inward.
and then you work inward.
I see.
So hers is covered with her centerpiece. She has a tablecloth here, so your shape would be, I want to say more organic, because your piece, as your material may stretch, may not have a very even shape, or a lot of times quilters some people want everything to be very even, very aligned, where you can see just as this is worked together, it's oblong, but it's not perfectly straight.
Exactly.
But it has an organic feel, where this one she used browns and teals and some creams, but it all blends together. And I've seen other ones where people have just done any kind of scrap, so it's any way that you feel as the artist or the quilter that you want to use it.
With this technique, you fold in your raw edges so that they don't
You're
show.
folding it in, and then you're folding it in, and then when you fold in your raw edges, and then you just basically do a running stitch.
I see.
And
Interesting.
and some people, like I've seen another one that a woman had done, and she's like, but I like my stitches very straight, that she measured, but it's not a technique that you have to sit here and measure and look, am I straight, am I even? And I think some of the beauty of it is actually when it's not all straight, because probably if you sew or you cut, sometimes everything doesn't always come out that perfect line.
Exactly.
And that's what I like about the technique of it.
And that reminds me of the Japanese concept of
Right.
wabi-sabi, the art of imperfection.
Oh, I like that. Wabi-sabi.
WABISABI. Yeah, we're going to go all around. There's one here, and then there's mine here. And so this is a beautiful cross stitch.
Yeah, cross stitch, lots of, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Once again, it's in flowers.
Of course, because we already figured a lot of
tatting,
people
and
like,
flowers.
right. And I think this was also part of the,
Yeah, this was also part of the contest we had with travel. So this person, she thought of Queen Elizabeth, and it just happened that the Queen did die when she was making this piece. So there's a piece there that she has of her funeral and of her coffin.
Oh,
So
right
it's
there, we
different
see, yeah.
pieces of her life.
I mean, that's really cool. I mean,
Right.
I think when I first thought about quilting myself, part of what I wanted to do is, because I've been fortunate enough to travel, I collect fabric from the places I've traveled, and I try to incorporate those fabrics and things that I've seen into my art quilts. And that's a way for people who don't have an opportunity to travel, or who may be unfamiliar with symbols that I have become familiar with in my travels, to share and educate people. So, we're all connected. The world we live in is global. And so art, music, these are ways that we connect globally with each other.
And this one, if you, excuse me, if you look at it, it's probably like she downloaded pictures and then she put it on fabric, and then you can see it with the picture on fabric. And then some, like here with the telephone booth, she probably made that
That's an
design.
iconic
That's an iconic
symbol. Yeah.
Which you know that's England, where here's other fabric where you see the British flag, you see the cars, and you also see the symbol of the telephone booth.
And some bling bling,
Right.
which is kind of cool. So,
Yeah.
quilts, we think of quilts as like, I don't know, they can be traditional.
What about this here? This is beautiful here. This
Yeah, this is more embroidery.
embroidery. I love doing that. I do a lot of embroidery.
Embroidery and crocheting. All right. So now we are at one of my pieces. In fact, this was my first piece that I ever did with Hannibal. And I call it Ancestral Voyage. And so I'm going to read what I wrote out as a description. My piece, Ancestral Voyage, was my first art quilt. It tells the story of my family lineage. My matrilineal and patrilineal family trees are deeply rooted in the red clay of Randolph County in the state of Georgia, specifically the town of Cuthbert, Georgia, which is also where I was born. As you can imagine, my ancestors worked farmland which was owned by others. They picked cotton, harvested peanuts, and looked after pigs, chickens, cows, and the like. Like most African Americans of that time, the path forward was a narrow one, as opportunities were scarce and education virtually non-existent. Some migrated north into the Midwest, hoping for a better future for their families. For some men, when the military was an option, they chose it. Fast forward, and spoiler alert, my father, Staff Sergeant Charlie Bussey, chose the United States Army. That choice had profound effects upon the life of my mother and brothers and me. Among other things, it led me to the University of Ghana Law School in Legon, Ghana in West Africa during the summer of 1981. I felt an instant connection to Ghana, as there's red clay like the red clay in Cuthbert, Georgia. I am constantly reminded of my ancestors and their contributions in the motto of the United States, E pluribus unum, out of many one. Also, these days when I travel on Interstate 75 in Georgia and I pass exit 80, Bussy Road, I reflect on my ancestors' journey, their quest for freedom, education, economic opportunities, and the fact I stand on their shoulders. So, interestingly enough, this is kind of faded. So this is the actual water tower in Cuthbert, Georgia. And it says City of Cuthbert and the year it was incorporated. So I'm going to have to do another photo and put it in so you can actually see that. And there's Bussy Road, exit 80. And then my favorite quote from Kwame Nkrumah, I am not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me. So I would say there are a lot of colors, my favorite colors being like purple, so some purple, some African mass, some cowrie shells to represent Africa, some, this is kind of like, so the patterns kind of sort of are muted for me because I really like color.
Were these stamped?
Yes, these were Adinkra stamps.
Okay.
And so I incorporate quite a bit. And it just so happened this fabric had African mask on it. And I don't know if you'll remember, but over on Linda's quilt, the hydrant, she has a little bit of this incorporated in her quilt. Because what we do when we quilt, when we meet at Hannibal, we share fabric. So, cowrie shells.
No. I was trying to see if they were threads, if they were.
Oh, if it had been embroidered.
Yes.
And that was just part of that particular fabric that I was able to find. And then Lauren has spent time in China. So these were some things that when she comes and brings fabric that, or things that we can choose, I chose something. I know not what it means, but this symbol is an Adinkra symbol, which is Jinayami, which means God is omnipotent. So there's a lot going on, and I chose gold thread. I don't know if the reason I chose the gold thread is because in Ghana was known for its gold before it got stolen by the British. And even now, you know, like the Ashanti stool, when the king, when they have their ceremonies, they bring out the gold. And so maybe that, again, was for me a connection to tie it all together, sort of, kind of.
Yeah, I read something recently that Ghana is going to be trading something in gold as opposed to U.S. coins.
Mm-hmm.
I just read that.
So I'm going to wrap this up. And any last thoughts, Miss Shelley?
Any last thoughts? I am so pleased that I came. I am full of the craftsmanship that I see. You know, there's things I would like to learn, like cross stitching, like what was that called?
Tatting.
Tatting. You know, so I see I have a lot of work to do.
We all do, but are you not going to have some pieces at the Hannibal exhibit?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so if you want to see what Miss Shelley is capable of, you need to come and check out the Hannibal. And Mom, do you have anything you would like to say?
Well, I just enjoyed walking around looking at the different pieces and everything. Been very inspirational to me and things that maybe I can sit down and do. I stay busy at home, but maybe I can do a little something if it's nothing but just cross stitch, a nice piece.
All right, so I'm going to check in with the ladies. Ladies, do you have any last remarks before I wind up this episode? Any last minute thoughts?
I think it's interesting how you have different fabrics from thread that you have that has been crocheted or quilted, or you take a thread and it's hand stitched, and the different beauty that someone has come across, and even different cultures that are represented here. And I think that's what makes it really nice with all the different fibers and different artwork that's here.
Miss Renee?
Well, I was thinking similarly, thinking that quilting is more than just a fabric or a thread. It's a paint. It's a symbol. It's a bead. It's a number of things that you put together to tell a story.
I agree. Miss Linda, any last minute remarks?
Any last minute remarks? I got into quilting at the Hannibal Heritage Center with a group of ladies that I thought were amazing when I saw their work and what I can do. And I started putting my stories on the quilts, and I have quite a few right now.
Yeah, you do. And, you know, Miss Linda is an artist extraordinaire because what don't you do and what haven't you taught us to do, Miss Linda, okay?
I do a little bit.
Yeah, she do a little bit. Right.
I just like working with my hands, and I like being around women that are ambitious and just like to have fun. We like to talk too.
We do. In fact, sometimes I can say when I came, I didn't come to quilt. I just came to hang out with the sisters.
But I think if you go back to quilting, and when people did quilt, it was a community effort.
Yes.
And that no matter what you want to call it, I think any group, usually it's the community of what you're doing. If you only like to hand piece, or even if you just like to be on your machine, it doesn't really matter. It's that community that you're getting, that you're connecting either with men and women and even children. I've been teaching some classes to young people that you can show and that you can, that makes the connection.
So the
It's all
one
about teaching.
One piece she didn't talk about, and I know the story of this right here. So there used to be a cypress tree called the senator. And so regrettably, someone in an act of arson set the tree on fire. And so I don't even know, and I would have to ask the historian, so I'm going to grab her, like how old this ball cypress tree was.
Oh, she was just telling me it was like
And-
1,300 years old.
I mean, and so someone took a piece of it and created this sculpture. Let me go and grab her and ask her if she can share that with us really quickly. Excuse me. Could I get one of you ladies to share with us the story about the bald cypress and the senator real quick, and then I'm going to end the podcast. And thank you ladies so much. We've had a fabulous time, and I'll make sure I share with you so you can listen the link of the podcast that I'm doing. I will text. Okay. All right. Okay, so we have our local historian and curator of the museum. She's going to come over and share with us the story of this piece of wood sculpture.
Well, this sculpture is from a tree called the Senator, which was 3,500 years old.
Wow.
It's a cypress. It was the oldest cypress in the country and the fifth oldest in the world. So this was the cypress one day. That's a 6-foot fence around it. This was the cypress the next day.
Wow.
Because someone crawled over the fence and
That's
let's
good.
just say
That's terrible.
illegal things happened, and it went up
Illegal
and turned. Yes.
with hangings or?
No, God no. She was smoking crack, and she caught the tree on fire, and it turned into a giant
Inferno.
130-foot chimney.
Wow.
What year was it that it burned?
2012. It burned in 2012.
Recently, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So this is what the tree looked like in the beginning of the 1880s.
Look at the base. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 men and 1 woman, 5 men, a woman, and it's still not.
And 2 children.
Okay, and
Yeah.
that was 140 years before it burned.
Wow.
So it grew all the more. But it, like I said, it was 3,500 years old. And the American Indians used to use it as a marker for where they would meet. So it was well known everywhere. Once it burned, the county took the remnants, and here you can see that's a fireman. So you can see how big the base of the tree was.
Wow.
Because the fireman is nothing but a speck in there.
So the person who burned it, what happened to them?
She went to jail, and then she got out of jail after 18 months, and then about a month later, she was back in jail. And then when she got out again, nobody knows.
Wow.
If she was smart, she moved. So, but anyway, sorry.
No, it's okay. This is all part of the history. That's why we get it from you. We get it from the source.
That was just my personal.
And that's okay. That's all good.
But this is a piece, one of the big pieces of the tree that was left. And they hired a couple different sculptors to do creations. Every museum in the county got one.
How cool. I didn't know that.
Actually, the county museum has several. They have like 10 or 12
And the county
pieces.
museum is on 1792.
Yes.
So that'll be
that's
another
the
visit
one.
we'll have to make.
Yes. Yes. You go up there, and because their facility is much bigger. But they don't. We got the biggest piece. I'm not sure if they liked us or didn't.
I think
like
so.
us,
You
but-
obviously knew somebody that knew somebody.
No, because I was saying when I saw the picture, I thought the piece was going to be about my height.
Okay.
And then 4 guys walked in carrying this.
Wow, it's
thing.
gorgeous.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing.
Wow.
So it is. It's
And she got it tacked to the wall.
yes.
And it's apropos that we have hugging or kissing the tree, the image of a Native American.
Yes, because that was the first, that was what they used it for. That was their marker for their meetings and all of that. That's where they would gather. And it was, if you go over to Big Tree Park still, its sister tree is over there. It's only 1,000 years old.
Wow.
It has a sister tree.
Yes, it's called Lady Liberty.
Wow.
Is the sister tree.
And hopefully they have more protection around it so nobody can do what.
There was a 6-foot iron fence
But you know, I
around
guess
this.
if you on crack, then you got superhuman. She probably leapt over the fence like she was Catwoman or some superwoman.
Who knows? All I know is when it happened, nobody could imagine what all the sirens and police
I remember
cars
hearing about
and-
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was because it happened in the evening, and it took a while till it smoldered and then burst into flames during the night. And yeah, it was horrible, horrible. So, but this is our piece. This is our Native American hugging his tree, and you can see the singe marks on the back.
Wow.
They left all of that as it was, and it's not stained or anything. This is just, this is what the cypress looks like.
Does it have a smell?
Cypress wood does have a smell. If
It
you
does
sand
when
it.
the- yeah, when it's, when it's
With nice smells. So that I'm
new.
nice wood.
It's
Like
been
a
here
cedar.
since like 2014, so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And if you come back in 100 years, it'll still be in this spot.
Okay. Thank you. I'm
No,
gonna take
thank you.
I'm gonna take a quick picture of that.